From childhood trauma to criminal justice training, my guest has tackled a variety of challenges throughout her personal and professional life. Here to talk about her latest challenge is Jacksonville Sheriff's Office Commander Erica Weber. Good morning, Commander Weber.
Good morning.
Thanks for being here. Um, you are now head of the Northeast Florida Criminal Training Center. That's out at the North Campus of FSCJ. And this is just the latest in your kind of very varied police career. I think you're at about 19 years now.
Yes, ma'am. Actually, this month's 19 years.
Okay. And a couple years at the training center.
I have been out there since Sheriff Waters came on, which was November of 22.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about your background, if you will. Are you a native of
I
Jacksonville?
I am.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, Terry Parker graduate.
Okay.
Yeah, it's been a long minute since then. I grew up here and have never wanted to leave. It's a nice place. I like visiting other areas, but I do like to come home. My family's here. I went to college here. Obviously, got my job with JSO, and I feel very fortunate and grateful to be a part of the community, but also be able to help as we are growing new officers to help protect our
Hmm.
city.
I understand you had an early job at Publix. Is
I
that?
did.
Yeah.
Actually, Ray Edwards and Gloria, his wife, very good friends of the family. I babysat their son growing up, who, by the way, makes me feel very old because he's probably darn near 30 now.
Wow. Yeah.
But they gave me my first job at Publix, and I stayed out at Lankin Hodges, store number 178. And Ray was amazing and helped as I learned along the way. It was great. Good experience.
Sounds like we've got some construction noise in the
Yes.
background. I'm not sure how much that translates over the air, but we'll see if we can get that to settle down. Um, so now you are at this field training center, which has a gun range. It is also where recruits come to learn about the job. It's where existing officers go to learn additional professional skills. Um, does that mean that you kind of have to know all the curriculum because you're running it? I mean, speed, measurements and interrogation tactics. Like, do you have
Well,
to know it all?
luckily for me, we have subject matter experts in all of these fields. So I do have to have kind of a cursory knowledge of it. But to say that I am the expert in all of these things, absolutely not. We also, the training center has offsite is the range, and offsite they will do field training with officers who are on the street. But we do have people within the unit. So, like for instance, the canine instructor. I'm not a canine instructor. I don't teach canine instructions, but I do have within our agency canine instructors who have become subject matter experts. They've done all of the coursework, DUI investigations. I'm not a DUI investigator. I've never been on the unit. Have I done DUIs in my past? Absolutely. And I've investigated them, but I am not the subject matter expert who will stand up there to present information to new recruits and ask and be able to answer all of their hard questions. So I bring in the people that is what they do day to day, or that they've done it in the past to the point that they've stayed knowledgeable on it, that they can come in and answer those, and turn the question inside out so that the recruit or whoever happens to ask it has a complete big picture, full information, as opposed to, well, I think this is how it happens.
Right. And something like DUI enforcement really is almost like a very specialized area, right? I mean, for the people who have to go to court and testify about what they saw and all of the elements of what they witnessed, they really have to be very skilled at that, specific area.
It is definitely one of the more nuanced areas of patrol, but I will say everybody that comes out of the academy is trained to do it. It's just that there are specific units where people can be assigned, and that is essentially the majority of what they do. It's not every bit of what they do. They're available for other calls also, but that is their day-to-day operation. So naturally, they're going to get better at it, and they're going to be more efficient when handling them.
So, like a lot of officers, maybe all officers, you started in patrol, is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I mean, I guess except for possibly corrections officers. And so you worked downtown a little bit?
I did. Yeah, when I came out, I was assigned to what was then Zone 1, now District 1, but the downtown area. I enjoyed it. I came out on an evening shift. There were very few females out. I was blindsided by how supportive I really expected to come into the field because I'd seen all the negativity about how women were treated in law enforcement, and I didn't get any of that. I came out and the group was extremely supportive. I came out on Fifth Watch, which is like We started at 2:30 in the afternoon and worked until like 2 in the morning.
Mm.
And so the 6th watch guys, the midnight shift, were the next ones to check on, and everybody was just I was one of the team members. I did not at any point get treated any differently, and it was such a blessing and a good experience to come out and just be able to be a part of the team.
When you're assigned a district like that or a zone, as it was the case at the time, do you have a lot of feeling about like, oh, I'd prefer this district or this zone to work in? Some have certain reputations. Perhaps some are seen as a little more, challenging, a little rougher than some other areas.
So when recruits are coming out of the academy, they get an opportunity to kind of give a wish list. It doesn't mean that we can 100% um, guarantee that that's what they're going to get, but they do get a wish list. So, like, I would like to go to this area, and generally it's because my friends and I got together and we're in the same recruit class, and we're going to take that camaraderie to the street.
Mm.
But in my situation, I did not get the area I requested, but it turned out to be a very good experience regardless. So I think in the end, it all worked out.
One thing that you did, after you got out of patrol was working in the risk protection unit, and that was kind of something that was almost an outgrowth of the post-Parkland area. It was
Yes,
kind of
ma'am.
an effort to do some intervention before somebody with a serious mental illness and a weapon, maybe did some harm.
Yes, ma'am.
How did you train for that? How did you, prepare for that responsibility, and what was that experience like for you?
Well, I will tell you, I had just gotten promoted to lieutenant, and I had gone to District 3, which is like the Bay Meadows 95 kind of corridor. And I had a day shift, which was really unheard of to be a new lieutenant on a day shift. Um, and our patrol schedule is fantastic, by the way. It's like essentially 5 days working, 5 days off. And, and so there's a rotation. I mean, you work 15 days out of the month. Granted, they're long days, but all that to be said, I was called and I was told, "Hey, the sheriff wants you to take this risk protection spot. Can I tell him you'll do it?" I'm like, "Well, golly,
Is that how it's
that's
handled?
kind of unfair." Yes. And I was like, "Do I have a choice here?"
Yeah.
But I went to the risk protection unit, and it was brand new to the agency. So as far as like training, there wasn't somebody I could say, "Hey, show me how you did this job." There was a lot of kind of figuring it out, a lot of interaction with the attorney's side of OGC, Office of General Counsel, as far as like what are our legal parameters here, so that we're not violating rights. What do we need to do to make sure that we're crossing the T's and dotting the I's and not creating a liability while trying to keep the community safe.
And people have some feelings about their Second Amendment rights. We
Oh,
should be clear,
absolutely,
right? Yeah.
absolutely. It is definitely it's a touchy subject. No, any way you slice it, it's a touchy subject. But the accreditation team that we work with at JSO, keeping us on track with like national best standards. There were some trainings that came up in St. Augustine that were offered. But again, it was totally new to Florida. So there was not a lot of, like, this is how you do it. So some of it was policy creation and working through the individual cases. And I think the very first case we worked through actually was kind of a tragic situation as far as like how this person got into came to our attention ultimately, and somebody that's really not been a problem any other time, but just had a mental health crisis and was creating a dangerous situation for neighbors that, as a sheriff's office, how do you let that go if you lived next door to that person and rounds were coming through your house? What do you expect the sheriff's office to do there? Like, there's got to
She's
be.
firing at her neighbors?
She was not firing at her neighbors, but firing from within her home at
Wow.
what she believed were people in her home that were not there.
Mm.
So, like, what do you do with that?
And so what did you do with that?
Well, we we did get the RPO, the risk
That's the
protection
risk.
order.
Mhm.
Yes, ma'am. And we were able to collect the weapons that were in the house, but also started to try to make sure we were getting her the help that she needed and hooking her up with the mental health services because ultimately I I'm one that I believe that people should have the right to have guns. I mean, we're in America, we're in the South. It's not unnatural for somebody to have a gun, but they've got to be safe with it. And in this situation, she was unable to be safe with it just based on kind of what was happening within her mind. So getting her the help that she needed was ultimately the goal of the sheriff's office while also keeping everybody else safe.
One of the jobs that you took on was also working in the dispatch center where 911 calls come in. Um, what was that like? I mean, you were overseeing the folks that are taking these calls. You also trained to take those calls yourself if needed, and I guess on occasion did.
Yes, ma'am.
Um, what is it about that job that you think people maybe don't understand?
Um, Gosh, there's so much that you don't understand about that job. As a normal citizen, you expect that there's a room full of people just waiting to grab the phone every time it rings, and there is in fact a room full of people, but that phone rings nonstop. And sometimes it's something very simple, and sometimes it's something that requires a lot of focus, a lot of attention because it's a big situation. Um, the dispatcher so there's 2 different roles in our comm center also. While we have, a pretty robust employee set in there at any given time, like, half of them are doing the dispatch radio side of things, and half of them are doing call taking. So, as they're taking those calls, I liken it to each call as a book you left open. You were reading part of it, and you put it down because now you're grabbing the next call, and that call went to dispatch for an officer to go out there. You never know the outcome of it. You hang up with that caller and move on to the next one. So in your mind, at least for me, and I don't want to put words in everybody's everybody's mouths that works in the comm center, but for me, it was like having, a zillion open tabs of, hey, what happened with that call? Hey, I hope everybody got out of that house fire okay. Oh gosh, the guy called about his finding his mom on the floor. Was she okay? Like, you just didn't have that closure where as a police officer going from call to call, you know how it ended. You wrote the report, you moved on to the next one, whether it was good or bad, you at least had an ending and you at least had something, some finality so that you weren't carrying around that, well, what if, what if, what if? And I do think our dispatchers and call takers have a lot of what ifs that get left open that they've got to have some way to get through it. So I think that I don't mean to be too, too, I don't know what words to put on it. I don't wanna put too much in their mouths because this was my experience in a call-taking role, not necessarily every single one of theirs, but I think that they take home a lot of what they hear on the phone because they never see the closure.
Mhm. And what is it like just kind of not knowing what that next call is gonna be? I mean, as you said, sometimes people are calling because they're, spotted somebody who dumped some garbage,
Sure.
or they're angry at a neighbor, and sometimes people are truly in the throes of the worst crisis of their life.
Yeah. Um, Not knowing what that call is gonna be when you grab the phone and you've got somebody screaming and your instant anxiety and it's up. The folks that are in the comm center for the most part, have besides brand new trainees, they have experienced that so many times that it becomes their normal, which I hope on days off they have an outlet. I really do. And we do make sure that we get services in there as quickly as we can when there has been a major incident. Mental health counseling, and we have a couple station dogs that we bring around. And I don't know about you, but petting a dog makes me feel better. So we do try to make sure that we are taking care of them as best we can. But I think about the young man in a pond. I took a call of a child that was drowning, and I remember just being incredulous taking that call, and it was third party. The lady on the scene could not get her phone to connect to 911. I don't know what the issue was with why her phone would not connect, but she could call her mother. So her mother called 911. So the mom's relaying stuff, and I remember asking the mom, "What do you mean nobody's helping him?" And it was just like, looking back, I think about how that question didn't help the investigation at all. It was like being able to, like, I'm a police officer sitting in a comm center, like, let me go. I wanna go do this. I wanna go help. I wanna be able to help. So, as the officer got there, it worked out. The officer, and I'm sure you saw, um it was posted to several media outlets, but she actually went in the water, was able to help retrieve the child, and started CPR before rescue showed up. But it just what do you mean nobody's helping? That moment, and I experienced that going in there and taking calls, and I wasn't in there all day, every day taking calls. They're on 12-hour shifts in our comm center. So they are in there all day taking calls when they are on the call taking um, responsibility for that day. So it's 12 hours of, what do you mean nobody's helping? What's going on? Like, help me understand what you're seeing so
Sort of
that
a helpless feeling.
I felt that way.
Yeah.
And in the end, they are helping. None of these calls would ever get a policeman to them or policewoman to them if if our call takers weren't so professional and able to compartmentalize and get that information um, squared away and put together in such a fashion that it could be sent out to the zone or district for calls. So they're amazing. Our call center does amazing work, and I don't think that they get the accolades that they should from the community. And that everybody that calls up, the phone's been ringing for 10 minutes. I'm like, yes, ma'am, I understand that. How can I help you now? It's like everybody's so ready to bark because they don't understand the big picture of what's going on, and everybody's calling because they need something and they need it now. It's definitely a difficult position to be in.
How is staffing for that? I mean, there was a time when it was very understaffed. Is it better now?
It is better now. The staffing has increased dramatically as far as applicants and qualified applicants. But the problem is, although the staffing is improved, everybody is still newer to the job. You don't have a lot of the veteran folks around. And also, some of them are still in training. While we show numbers on the books for people, the positions are staffed, they're not fully trained.
Mhm.
So while it may look like we're at full staffing, we don't have fully capable individuals just yet.
Yeah. If you're just joining us, we are talking to Sheriff's Office Commander Erica Weber about officer recruitment and training, and you can join the conversation. Give us a call at 904-549-2937. You can email First Coast Connect at wjct.org or reach out on social media. We do have a question from Paul, an email saying, how are the new officers trained to deal with the so-called sovereign citizens? It seems like more and more in today's society have either total disregard for the laws or believe that they don't apply to them because they have some different status. And that, of course, is kind of this larger movement for people who say that they're not really bound by the laws of this nation. They often say they don't have to pay taxes, but they can present a real problem for law enforcement, and really kind of any government agency that is um, has enforcement desires of some kind, whether it's their boundaries or the requirements that they have on site.
Great question. Paul, the Criminal Justice Standards and Training Commission actually sets the basic recruit training that everybody gets. And there is a section it's 770 full hours for police training from the state that we have to deliver. And there is a section in that training that deals specifically with sovereign citizens. But it also comes up when we do talk about Second Amendment right or amendment rights and being able to um, provide information when asked. If a crime was committed, there is an obligation to provide your identifying information and for that officer to conduct his investigation. It's not obviously if somebody's done nothing wrong and it's a consensual stop, we would not push that issue. But the training is given at the time of recruitment, but it's also something that we do go over throughout different training modules that will happen throughout the year as well.
Hmm. Um, I wanted to ask you about, I mean, kind of after that stage of your career working in the call center, you moved into the special. Um, it's not called special victims,
Special assault.
special assault,
Mhm.
and that's things like child abuse, elder abuse, child sexual abuse. How did was that another assignment where you got a call and they said the sheriff wants you to go there? Are you going to do it, or was that something you chose?
No, so actually the order's a little bit different. I came out of patrol and went straight into it was called sex crimes then, but special assault as a detective. So I went straight there, and that was when I came to JSO. All I wanted to do was be a sex crimes detective. Like that was my goal, and when I hit it pretty quickly, I was like, okay, now what? Now what do I do? So I spent 4 years as a detective in special assault, and then through a series of promotions, I was able to go back as a sergeant and worked 2 years as a sergeant in there.
Okay.
Then I was able to actually go back as a lieutenant also, and I stayed as a lieutenant for 2 years with them before I went to the comp center.
Okay. A lot of people would think that that's the last place that they would want to land. Those are some very difficult, there's internet crimes against children. There's, all kinds of abuse cases that people in those roles have to witness. Very hard not to take that kind of stuff home. What was it that drew you to that particular why did you want to go into that particular unit?
So straight out of college, I actually went to the Department of Children and Families, interned with them, got a job with them, and was with their sex crimes family violence unit at DCF. From there, I went over to the child protection team and was doing their law enforcement interviews of sex crimes or physical abuse victims. I I was a victim myself as a child, so I think all told, truly being able to help people put their pieces back together and being able to help families move on and kind of understand what's next um, was very helpful for me. And I don't mean to make the job about me. It's not, it was never my intent. But being able to be in a place where I feel like I could do the most good was important to me. And there's some there's some bad stuff to be seen in law enforcement. I mean, there's some scenes and some things that you can't forget. No matter how hard you try, you cannot forget. So, in an effort to try to make those situations, I guess, as as good as they could be, and it's a bad situation regardless, but to make things better for others, I felt like I would do the most good in a special assault role, and I stayed there. And that's not an uncommon opinion for people to say, "Ooh, I could never work there. Ooh, I don't want to hear that. Ooh," you know, but being able to tell families at the end of the day, "Hey, this person will be held accountable for what happened to you and your family." That was the fuel for my gas tank to keep me going, and that was the impetus to show up every day. And there were hard days. There were days where situations maybe were similar to what I experienced, and it was, one of those, like, compartmentalize my own stuff and deal with your stuff. But at the end of the day, being able to at least help a family, I couldn't fix it. I couldn't make it not have happened, but being able to help them understand what happens next, what resources are out there, um, how to heal, I think was my driving factor and focus.
And at some point during your service doing that work, you were kind of motivated to readdress what happened to you as a child. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
How did you go about that?
Um, so at the time, I worked for a lieutenant who was also very close. Well, we had been friends before I worked for her, and I went to her and just said, "Hey, listen, this happened to me in my past, and I would like to. I'd like to follow up on this investigation because it had previously been investigated, and it just that investigation fell flat. But because of my age, there was no statute of limitations issue on it, so it was readdressed. And because I was in the special assault unit, nobody from my unit could work it. They did not want there being any kind of conflict of interest, so it actually was worked by the integrity unit, which is the unit that investigates essentially police officers who have committed criminal acts. Um, so they took it completely out of our shop and into another shop where I was not friends with those folks. I mean, I love all JSO members, but so that they weren't impacted, so their decisions could be clear.
And so what was the resolution? Did you have to kind of go and testify at some point? Was this litigated just kind of how any other case would be? Was there some
Yeah,
punishment?
it was it did not go to a trial. There was a plea agreement in it. Um, but the the process was the same as any other investigation. Um, the person was out of state at the time, so a warrant had to be obtained. Um, Luckily for me, he actually brought himself back to the state to confront. I told him I wanted to confront him about it, so he brought himself back. And during that situation, it was not in Jacksonville where we met. He was scared to come to Jacksonville, so we met actually in Daytona, and so the warrant would have been needed anyway because we were out of jurisdiction. But I sat down at a Panera with him and his wife and discussed the things that he had done to me, which was really difficult. And it's I think back to the times like as being a sex crimes detective, where we would ask people to help us confront the person that had done something, and how I don't want to say like nonchalant we are when we ask that, but just um, like, we do it all the time, so we don't think much of it. But having to be in that seat and the anxiety of being the one that this happened to, I mean, I can feel it right now. Just the feeling of like, I don't know, it's a like, what's gonna happen next? Almost not fear, but just an uncomfortable, like, what's he gonna say? How's this gonna go? Like walking into a new job, that whole, like, just the apprehension of not knowing what's coming. And I think about how many times I put people in that position, again, for the furtherance of their case, but how little I had thought about it until I sat in that seat and had that feeling myself.
How do you think your case, I mean, a lot of times people, when they bring a case that comes years later, there's sort of this reflex as to, what took so long?
Mhm.
Um, did you feel that from your colleagues when you brought it forward? Do you think that your situation helped them understand that in any way differently than perhaps they had?
Um, you know, years back, there was a movement, the Start by Believing. I don't know if you remember. It's
Mhm.
been probably, gosh, 12 years maybe that was a big push. Um, the Women's Center was instrumental in starting and making sure that the sheriff's office was picking up on that. And I do think that people looked at it a little funny, like, "You've been in this unit for how long, and now you're just saying something? Like, really?" Um, but I also think most of the people that are in the special assault unit are in there for the right reasons and that they understand the big picture. Um, we have pushed out to all of our patrolmen and women. I say patrolmen, but it's anybody in a uniform that's working a call for service. Um, the trauma centered approach and how it's a way of interviewing people that the CGSTC and FDLE have also uh, embodied, but it's a way of interviewing people where you're giving them kind of the floor to tell the story, the experience in their own words, and people have a myriad of reasons as to why they don't come forward at the time when things happen as their young children. And in my case, I did. I told my parents. It just didn't get handled. So
And was there something wrong with the investigation?
no, no, there was no investigation, and I love my parents. They tried very hard to do what they believed was right. I think I'm 46 this month, and I was 11 at the time. I don't think that the community was talking a lot about what to do if something happens to your child. I don't, and I think my family kind of rallied the wagons, like we're just not gonna talk about it. And I don't blame them necessarily for this not getting handled then. It would have made things a whole lot a whole lot easier for me, and who knows where I would be now. Maybe this wouldn't have been my path. Um, but I say all that to say, I do think given the ability to change the situation, they would have done things differently. I do think if they knew now what if they knew then what we know now, they would have done things differently. At least that gives me a little bit of solace. I
Yeah.
hope that's what would have happened.
Thank you very much for sharing. I know that's a difficult story to talk about. We do have a call from Mark on the west side. Good morning, Mark. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for letting me follow that. I was a 911 operator many years ago. I just gotten out of the Navy. This would have been in the 90s. And we were, it was a horrible situation back then. We had this horrible 8 hour rotating forward every month shift. We're always short. We had like two or three veteran operators and dispatchers, and then everybody else was brand new all the time, a lot of turnover. And one of the things that really got everybody that was a contention was for the turnover was the pay was so low. I mean, it was you could have got. I remember somebody had gotten a job to work at a 7-Eleven and was making $2 an hour more. Now, that was 30, 40 years ago, and I know that the 911 people's pay isn't attached to the police officer's pay, but I do remember a couple of years ago there's a whole talk about the pension agreement and raises and all that kind of stuff. So what is the pay like now for these burdened operators?
Ooh, we're gonna have to look that up. I did get a pretty sizable bump for them when I took the unit, and they've since gotten raises contractually as well. The I'm gonna have to look. I don't know the number offhand, but I will definitely look that up right quick, like Mark. Um, I will tell you, we've had a lot more with the raises, and you're right. The pay was somewhat abysmal when I first got there, and they had not seen raises in quite a while. So the chief that I worked for at the time and I pushed very, very hard to get them increases so that they weren't being paid less than the convenience store clerk or places where the money should that job is difficult. The money should match that. So we've definitely increased it. And I'm looking, there we go, dispatcher. So also, Mark, we're not hiring, previously we were hiring call takers, then dispatchers. We're now hiring to do both positions. Um,
Kind of interchangeably.
correct.
Mm.
So the starting pay is just over $52,000 to come on with us. And then over time, obviously, there's the annual raises that are attached. That is a union position also under AFSCME. So raises do come with the union contracts that are negotiated.
I do wanna ask you because you mentioned dogs earlier, and I know that you're a bit of a dog person, but you've also brought or helped usher in the era of kind of these therapy dogs, Buster among them at the
Buster's
station.
amazing.
Yeah. Um, that's kind of changed how the the environment feels, and it's been, I think, a lot of fun for you and some of the officers just to kind of have that, animal outlet.
It definitely has been. So, Canines for Warriors out in Ponte Vedra partnered with us, and they have brought us 4 different station dogs. So we've got Buster, Leroy, Charlie, and Sunny. Um, Sunny is primarily with corrections. Charlie is she goes out. She's a big, beautiful white doodle dog. She goes out with the officer involved shooting debriefs and the critical incidents. And then Buster and Leroy make their way around the station, and they're just I describe them as the light switches. Like, you could be walking through the hall having a ho-hum day, and the second that you see one of those dogs, it's instantly better. The tail's wagging, their ears are up, they're just excited to see you. And I adore the dogs. They make me happy, and it's not about me 100%. It's the same way for anybody else walking down the hall. One of the Leroy's main primary, I call it primary mom, Melissa, texts me all the time about how happy she gets just seeing how happy other people are when they see Leroy. So it's a total warm fuzzy for the entire agency.
I think you have 6 dogs yourself,
I
so
do have 6 dogs
okay.
myself. Don't ever get 6 dogs. 6 dogs is too many.
Yeah, I would say easily, well, listen, Commander Weber, it is so nice to meet you. Thanks so much for coming
Yes,
in
ma'am.
today and telling us about the center. Appreciate it.
Thank you.